Hey everyone, my name is Rooster, and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing the Wraith. It's been a while since I featured it on the channel, since I've been playing a lot of Hound and Grenade Fangs with Mountains, but I do sometimes still play the Wraith because I think it's extremely powerful still in the right scenario. Now, it's not what we start with, of course, as we have a Spider Fang opener here on the lead specialist, and my opponent Red Scare is a supply specialist starting with hounds and sledges. So ample chaff clearing, but a lack of perhaps, proper chaff and also DPS. For myself, I do have chaff, I do lack DPS. I'm not entirely sure here what I want to go for. There's tons of options depending on what you value more. You can either get DPS immediately by building Marksman. The downside is Marksmen are not always the best on aggro because they're quite slow. You can go Void Eyes as well, which would be the more powerful line, I think, here on round 1. The highest tempo, but they can't shoot up by default, so you would have to fix that in the upcoming rounds. And then the more greedy route would be to just buy double Crawler here. Blue Crawlers are powerful, and you will need chaff down the line, and it kind of opens up other DPS units on round 2 when you have more money. I'm going to go for the greedy option here, but it would be perfectly fine as well to go for either Marksman or Void Eye in my scenario. My opponent does a similar thing here, goes for double Crawler. Same story, really. They lack DPS, but on round 2 they'll have better access to better DPS units than something like Marksman. A Void Eye in their case would mean a lot of mid-sized units, and that could get a bit tricky, so I don't mind that line either. I am selling a building here on round 2. I really like selling both of them, especially on aggro and especially on elite, because it just gives you that little bit of extra cash to go for some bigger plays. Sometimes on elite you can only buy 2 150 costs on round 2, which is not ideal, but if you sell the buildings you can often pick a card and then still get a 300 cost plus a 150 cost, which drastically improves the power of your board, which is kind of important. I think good early games with elite go a long way, and if you can be in the driver's seat, that will help, because if you're not, you're often going to be losing rounds, feeding a bunch of experience, and then climbing back from that can be a bit of a pain. Round 1 here, looking great. My opponent didn't buy DPS, so the spiders are doing a great job, and I will be able to get an early win. Just gonna finish here as my small turret does help out, clears a couple crawlers, and a very good first round. Round number 2, we immediately have to deal with unit reinforcements. Now, there's a ton of options here, right? I'm thinking both about what I need, which is some DPS, so Marksman or Phoenix is probably what I want, because it also solves the anti-air problem. But my opponent here could go Stormcaller, could go Sabertooth. Both of these are pretty good as well, defensively, right? I have the Fangs up front, the Spiders are slow, so I could see Stormcaller being picked. I probably don't need to worry too much about it because I do have a bunch of chaff, and I mean, if I pick Phoenix especially, it does counter both Stormcaller and Sabertooth, so yeah, not too bad. And now I can sell this and go for a play elsewhere. I actually end up going for the Sabertooth here, which I find very surprising. I guess I maybe bought it thinking that my opponent would go for the Stormcaller. I guess either way, by selling the buildings, I could buy a Phoenix myself regardless, and the value of these things is basically the same, right? Like here you pay 50, but Phoenix has a 50 unlock cost, and yeah, the Sabertooth is free, both sell for 200. So this way I diversify the board early on, I add another threat on the ground, and I still get to buy a Phoenix. I think in hindsight, I probably should have just picked up a Phoenix. I didn't quite do the math, but if I could build or pick the Phoenix, build a second one, and then still get a chaff here on the right side, I'd be pretty happy. Aggressive play on the right side. The Stormcaller didn't get picked up. More Sledgehammers now being purchased. And yeah, this right side attack is quite scary. We have a Hound, a Crawler, and a Phoenix right behind from the Unidrop. That will definitely get my tower and probably end up winning. I am pushing in, but that tower also has been leveled now. Those are the perks of Supply Specialist, I guess. And I am going to get stuck. The debuff, not great. A second debuff is inbound, and yeah, I will end up losing here. So this already kind of showcases, right, what can go wrong on Elite if you lose some tempo. Because there's a level 2 Phoenix on my board, and even though it's strong, it's probably going to get taken out now. And if it dies to the Phoenixes, which is the only anti-air units, they will probably level. And now my opponent has caught up to me in levels. If this continues, they will often get a whole bunch more levels on other units, think sledgehammers, and I could be in trouble. For now, though, this is fine. We both have a level 2 Phoenix. There was an aggressive play on the right side, and, well, you know, now I can try and punish that. I see the laser sight, and, I mean, that's probably the best thing to pick here. And I think to myself, I'm not convinced I want to play spiders. They're level 1 spiders, not level 2. And this right side seems extremely vulnerable to Wraith. And laser sight on a Wraith is a very, very premium item. So what I'm trying to do here is position the Wraith in such a way that it insta-locks onto those Phoenixes. And I saw that if I put it in the corner, it actually will get an insta-lock. And if, with this crawler in the way and the Hound being low level, I should be able to distract this for long enough. Also, my opponent could, of course, jump drive, but all of my flanks are quite well defended. I have a Fang over here to defend this. I have a Fang over there to defend the left side. So I thought, you know, he might very well keep it there because my opponent did put it behind the Hound, so it is somewhat safe. And calling the bluff is quite common in Heimamar sometimes when you create a threat like this. You kind of want to see your opponent deal with the threat that you created. So yeah, I counter it with a Wraith, I sell a Spider, I leave everything else I have here on the left side because it was winning. And yeah, now I want to see what my opponent does. I believe that they bought more Crawlers, at least one over here. Another Fang as well, just a bunch more chaff, and then a second Phoenix behind the Sledgehammers. Not a bad round, but I think this Wraith will be able to do a number on the right side. As you can see, immediate lock on here. Of course, it tries to find as many different targets within its range as possible, and so that level 2 Phoenix with the item immediately dies without achieving anything. And that means I'm in a much, much better spot now. Sadly, my Spider on the left does get insta-locked as well. I lose it. That means a ton of my chaff gear is now gone. And it will very much be down to this Wraith to see if it can clutch up or not. Not sure it will. That's a lot of sledgehammers in the way. This Phoenix, again, takes down my level 2 Phoenix, very nearly levels. I would be somewhat surprised here if I somehow managed to win. It would involve the Phoenix, I think, getting in front of all of these ground-based units and then somehow getting sniped. But looking at how this debuff is going to happen, I don't think that will be the case. And indeed, okay, I do take down one Phoenix. That helps a little bit, but there's just too many sledges on the ground. A second debuff comes in, and that will be another level 2 Phoenix now for my opponent. Not amazing, but, you know, we have to deal with that. And now I just decide to fully commit to Wraith. I'm not interested in going into the Tarantulas. They just, you know, didn't have the levels. And honestly, it's not my favorite Chaffler unit right now. It's good late, but it just has so many requirements to, you know, do well. And Sabretooth, I think, still counters it very, very neatly. So I'd much rather go for something like a Wraith here, especially, you know, with the items and a little bit of tempo I managed to get, at least from this positioning. So now I've forced a jump drive out from my opponent. They do have the laser sights on the Phoenix, so, you know, the jump drive isn't that bad. This still has ample range, even if this game goes into the late game. I add another Crawler here on the shadow flank. Very, very common thing to do. If you decide to put a unit very aggressively in this corner, it will be relatively safe because this flank is closer, but do use that flank. Otherwise, you could still get caught. Phoenixes get swapped. Not exactly sure why. I decided to go for range on my Wraith. It's always going to be the first thing that you want to click. Or, well, I say always, almost always. There are like rare scenarios on aggro where you might want floating artillery array, but 99% of the time it will be range first. I do keep the Saber here as some frontline, and then, I mean, we'll just have to see really what my opponent decides to do. Another Sledgehammer. This is a pretty common play against the Wraith, because it chaff clears so well that you kind of want to try and get some tanks in the way to stat check it. But at level 2, it already starts to have a lot of DPS. I do have the first and second attack and defense, the first attack and defense enhancements, which helps a lot. And you can see that level 2 Wraith versus level 1 Sledges, it doesn't really go that well for the Sledgehammers. A flank is attempted, but not successful. My opponent does have the additional deployment slot advantage over me, but as I often say on Elite, it's often more about quality than quantity, so I don't think I should pick it there. I feel like oftentimes when you pick this early on Elite, the additional deployment slot that is, you just end up not getting enough value out of it. It prevents you from getting the techs you need when you need them. It prevents you from buying the units you want when you want them. So yeah, I often just end up skipping it. So I keep the 150 resources in the early game for different things. Redeployment here gets picked up by Red Scare. I decide to go for the Wasp Swarm. Very common when you play Wraith is to add some Wasps at some point after you've clicked range, just to make sure that whatever unit they try to, you know, kill the Wraith with gets distracted, because most units that can kill Wraith don't do very well against Wasp. Think about, you know, Marksman, even Farseer, Boat, kind of a similar story, Melting Point. They will all get stuck somewhat on the Wasps, and I guess the benefit as well here is that it defends any aggressive play from my opponent. I have 1,000, and I really wanted to get Floating Artillery Array on this round because I felt like I was so ahead. Right, I still have 4,000 hit points. Last round looked fantastic, and if I can just keep leveling these Wraith, keep in mind it's not far off of leveling on round 5 to level 3, then the Wraith can just do everything. It's one of those rare scenarios where, you know, your Chaff Clear unit gets a lot of levels early, partially thanks to Elite Spec, but yeah, I decide not to grab a third Wraith, and I go for the Floating Artillery Array here to keep the tempo up. Opponent goes for an Overlord, and I decide to add a Wasp next to, of course, the Wasp spawn that we have. Left side still very open. Field Maintenance clicked on the sledges. Again, pretty good click usually against Wraith, but I am ahead of the curve here with 8-gun Wraith already. The levels and the low-level sledges just don't really hold on, or as long as you perhaps might want if you're Red Scare. Left side will get through. It takes a bit longer. There's more sledges over there, but the right side has collapsed. The Wasps are now coming in. Even the late crawlers are distracting for a bit, and yeah, that Overlord does not stand a chance. It is going to go down. More damage is going to be dealt. So already I've achieved everything I want. My Wraith have got the 2 techs that they need with range and 8-gun. And now I can basically start thinking about protecting them, which is often what these Wraith comps try to do. Everything is about keeping the Wraith alive, right? Buying more crawlers, buying steel balls, mechanical division to get more crawlers, you know, getting the Wasps. Whatever unit you can buy that can stall and annoy the enemy units that try to kill your Wraith, the better. Now, round number 6, and we get EMP Armor Void Eye from the unit drop for Red Scare. Very good counter to Wraith. It's extremely annoying to deal with this, and especially when I'm Elite, the only thing that can photon a Wraith on command, right, without the item, is Overlord. And Overlord costs a lot on Elite, right? I have to unlock it. I mean, that's the same for everyone. But the Overlord costs 750 at level 2, plus the photon. It's an expensive round. So yeah, good counter here, and it might cause me some problems. Another Overlord gets picked up. Overload is the first tech that they go for. And I decide to add another Wraith. I also add the 2 Farseers from the unit drop as my anti-air. Anything here could have worked. If I don't get these, I would probably buy Blue Marksman. But, you know, whatever anti-air units I would be given, I was happy to use. Left side, I'm not really going to do too much about. And I am thinking here about second attack eventually, but I don't have the money for it right now. I also go for a Sledgehammer on the shallow flank. I really want to make sure that this does not die. So adding more units on that shallow flank will help with that. And the thing is, because my opponent did go for the EMP armor, they don't really have a great answer to the Wasps, which I'm taking a bit of a mental note of. And it means that next round I might be able to go for that, right? I do need Photon perhaps at some point, because you can see my Wraith did get crippled there. Thankfully, there weren't that many Void Eyes, and so my big level 3 Wraith is still alive. The left side is still winning, and the right side manages to punch through. That's a good amount of damage, again, coming in. And with Red Scare only being at 1800, they're now going to find themselves at 500 hit points, with basically 1 round away from a loss. Round number 7 and a big red spell shows up. I mean, you pretty much have to pick this, especially because it's Ion Blast. This spell just, it can't be said enough, is extremely high value for how much damage it can deal. Can be a bit tricky sometimes. There are some moves you can do, of course. Red Scare has the redeploy. You can buy a mobile beacon, especially when you're playing aggro. You can often just grab like a clump of your units and move them back or laterally, whatever really you feel like would do best. And you can see that that will be the case here. Both of us do pick it. I try to align it as best as I can to also hit some of the ground units. Gonna move away my Farseer, Wasp, Wraith, and a couple of crawlers towards the back to try and dodge this ion beam, because I expected it to be used on the right side. Now I'm going to buy more wasps and perhaps even go for an aggressive play on the left. I decide that, I might not need this blue Wraith over here. I can't include it in the beacon, so if the ion beam is used, it probably will end up dying. I'd much rather try to just get in over here. So double wasp plus a Wraith, and selling that should allow me to go for, second attack, plus perhaps a level here on this Farseer that I'm saving. So that's the play that I go for. It's perfectly fine to abandon the side that you're ion beaming, because if the ion beam lands, it'll help out with shaft clear, it'll take down some of the important enemy units, and you can pretty much focus on the other side of the field. 2 of the overlords get leveled here, so they are very, very tanky, but we'll have to see how it goes on the left, because even though this tower has been leveled 3 times, it's still going to end up falling relatively quickly once I get hold of it. And on top of that, my army on the left is going to be safe and also moving towards this unleveled tower on the right, which is often kind of the secondary thing you need to defend when you abandon one side of the board. It's not about this debuff, it's about the one that follows. Great debuff timer there for me, by the way. The boat does lock on, my Wraith does get EMP'd, but at least it tanks for long enough that my Farseer at level 2 can take down one of the blue boats. And now the rest of the army is collapsing. There's a ton of wasps in there. And, as I said before, I noted that my opponent did not have the best anti-air versus wasp. And so we bought more of them this round. The Overlord will get stuck on it. And I don't need a lot of units to survive here to be able to take the victory. And as my wasps tank for my Wraith, the final Overlord falls. And it will just be a 7-rounder on elite spec, kind of showcasing you the power, right, of Wraith in this case. Of course, it's a bit of a fringe scenario where I am elite spec, but this is what elite spec can do sometimes. You can use the fact that you can buy level 2 units, and some units really love having those level 2 or that level 2 advantage early on, like Wraith. And if you then focus on the fact that you can just pump a bunch of resources into the 2 Wraith that are carrying the entire game, you can get leads, and with those leads, the Wraith can basically start killing everything. I mean, look at that, right? 400,000 damage, 407 units killed, 80,000 damage last round, even though it got taken down pretty quickly. And we didn't even need to buy the Photon here, right? There weren't that many Void Eyes in the way, and so we could just tempo things out by utilizing the Wasp. Now, what should my opponent have done? Of course, it's a bit of a gamble. I'm going to try and replay this in a fair way, right? I'm not going to use the Ion Beam over here and like perfectly line it up with where the new Wraith and the Wasps were. I don't think that's realistic. So let's line it up over here as if we were trying to just kill this and then drag it down. What I would do, however, is just abandon it, right? As I said before, you can often just abandon the side of the board that you're ion beaming, because the ion beam will either force them to move, and if they don't move, it'll just kill whatever's there. So you don't really need to worry too much about that side of the field. I am going to go for 2 more boats. I'm going to put a boat kind of late over here, lone on round 7 mandatory. I mean, we were almost dead at, low HP, so we have to lone. And then I will go for something like this with the levels on the sledgehammers. Range, I think, important on the boats. You can't really be running overload only for more than 1 round. And then let's put another crawler here as well to try and stall a bit. In this case, I think the sledgehammer levels are very important. Just, doubling their hit points, making sure that the field maintenance actually does something, and perhaps can contest the Wraith that is also level 2 should help. Let's see how this goes. So my Ion Beam is mostly going to miss as well, right? I take down 1 Farseer, a couple of Fangs, and that's about it. And then it's kind of a fair comparison, I guess, on how this right side will do. Notably as well, how well these sledgehammers do, right? You can see their hit points. They would have already died now if they were level 1. But because they're level 2, they managed to stall for a good amount of time. And so the boats will actually lock on to the Wraith. That Phoenix gets caught. The boats are still alive. The left side doing well. And even though this Farseer is likely going to end up killing that boat, we do get rid of all of the Wasps and even manage to damage this Wraith a little bit. So this should be a round victory. Farseer here will manage to fight back, but it will go down. And so it will be a round victory. Very close, but at least, right, this would have enabled some counterplay. I think at that point, I would have just, sold this Phoenix, added more Farseers on this side of the board, potentially shield the Wasps, whatever. But either way, this already allows for more counterplay going to the next round, because Red Scare would have had a double tech boat, which is kind of where you want to be. And it just enables more stuff, right? Also, at that point, I would have to start worrying about buying Photon Overlord, because buying more EMP armor, Void Eyes would be a thing that my opponent could go for. So yeah, hope this was instructive. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about it. And have you, played a bunch of Wraith, even carry Wraith? Do you struggle to deal with them, or do you always beat them with ease? Let me know. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.